What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
We're here. Oh, I I wish we had video. I mean, I don't, because the way that we sit, I'm like, no, thank you. No, I don't want to have video because we sit on a bed, like a day bed. So it's not a flattering position to be sitting in. But I'm looking across at Sierra right now, and her hair looks so pretty because she's got the tinsel, and she's got it up on top of her head in like a messy bun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so pretty that I'm like, it makes me think of Christmas.
Dude, I don't know what it is. I have fucking dyed my hair like since I was 12 or some shit like that. Like I had highlights. I had the bottom of my head a whole different color multiple times. I had colored highlights. I had feathers. I had all the things. I have never gotten so many compliments about the fucking tinsel.
I think it's so
I don't
pretty.
know if it's like just, by the way, I did not do tinsel because it's Christmas. I did tinsel because my best friend's daughter, so my niece,
yes,
she had tinsel in her hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, I fucking want tinsel. And my best friend, she used to go to cosmetology school, and she's just amazing. And she was like, I'll do it. I know
you listen to this, by the way.
I know you listen to this.
I'm not saying your name, but we love you, and your cookies were delicious.
But at Sally Beauty Supply Co. for $20, or at least here in Washington, it's $20. It's tinsel, 12 packs of different colored tinsel, the beads, because they're beads and you clamp them, and a tool to thread it through for $20. So I left it at her house because I was like, then, you guys can use it. I can use it. We should get one, and you can put tinsel in my hair for Christmas the thing
season.
is, so this tinsel, I was thinking like, okay, one pack of tinsel is probably going to do it, right? No, there's at least like probably 10 other sessions just in the one pack that we opened.
It's pretty. Like I said, I wish.
But yeah, I've gotten so many compliments on it.
To be fair, I
also have really long hair too. So when my hair's down, especially
that's why I'm like, I think I need tinsel. She
didn't even have to cut the tinsel because of how long.
No,
my hair
I think I need to have tinsel in my hair. We need to probably get some tinsel stuff here.
What she does. So for people, if you do want to try the tinsel, how most people do it, I think, is they just put the tinsel and the piece of hair through the bead and then clamp it. What she does is she ties the tinsel or the bead onto the tinsel and then puts the hair through. I don't know if it lasts longer. I'm assuming it does. Anyways, yeah. So tying the bead on it, I think it makes it last longer.
Apologies. I'm not going to cut out everything we're saying.
Oreo is having a temper tantrum.
Is in the room with us. So if you hear the weird, that's
she's
Oreo
throwing a temper tantrum.
I don't know what she's doing. She's being weird. But anyways, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that we can get video at some point. I just don't like the way that we sit right now, and it's not. I'm uncomfortable. Because
I'm fat, so I want a table in front of my belly.
But we a little chubby up in here, and so we don't want you would get like a full body view, and we don't want that. We want to.
If you want a full body view, there's only
for reals. Just $9.99 a month. No, I'm just kidding. But
did you just say $9.99?
I don't know how much. I don't know.
Bitch, only $10 a month.
I feel like that's what people do. They do monthly subscriptions.
No! You want to see my body like that? You're spending a lot more money than that.
Listen, I don't know.
I gotta make some goods off of it, man.
Anyways, but no, I sit there and I'm like, eventually we'll get video, but we got to have a different setup for video because it just doesn't look. It's not going to be a good whatever. Anyway, so I was thinking that when I was doing this was that Sierra's hair just looks so pretty, and I was like, damn, if we had video, maybe one of these days I'll take a picture of us and put us on Instagram so that people can see.
I gotta make sure I have makeup on first.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about how pretty Sierra's hair is and tinsel and video. We're actually here to talk about something else. Are you guys ready to listen to what we are talking about this week? So I told you what we're talking about. So what are we talking about?
The Black Dahlia.
The Black Dahlia. Okay, so we are talking about Elizabeth Short. This is in 1947 in Los Angeles, California. A woman is found murdered. She was deemed Black Dahlia after her death, and this case still is unsolved to this day. So we're going to go into a little background. So Elizabeth Short was born July 29th, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts. She was the third of 5 daughters. Her father was Cleo Alvin Short Jr. and her mother was Phoebe May Sawyer. And her sisters were Virginia May West, Dorothea Schossler, Elnora Chalmers and Muriel Short. And I think the reason why they have different last names is because I think they took their names like after they grew up and got married. I think they were all born Short, like their last name was Short, but then as they grew up, they had different last names. Now, her father was a sailor in the United States Navy. And at one point, her father even built a mini golf course. However, he ends up losing all of his savings, like all of his money and savings in the 1929 stock market crash, as I feel like most people did. That's how we had like the whole Great Depression. Then in 1930, okay, so again, loses all of his money in 1929. And in 1930, his car is found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge in Boston. And obviously, the only conclusion is that he jumped.
Suicide.
Yeah, he jumped off of the bridge.
As soon as you said abandoned and bridge,
yeah,
put two and two together.
Yeah, he jumped off of the bridge. So after this, her mother is like, well, I guess I have to raise my family. So her mom gets a job as a bookkeeper and kind of takes care of the family. Now, Elizabeth does have bronchitis and asthma attacks like all the time since she was a child. And she actually undergoes lung surgery at the age of 15, which is crazy. I mean, you think about that. That's back in the 1930s. Because you think about how the recovery time on that would be, especially back then. Whew. Now, after this, her mother ends up sending her to spend every summer with friends in Miami, Florida for the next 3 years. And this was to help her escape the cold of the Massachusetts weather, probably because...
Probably fucking hurt her lungs.
Right. Probably because with all the lung stuff.
I remember when I lived in South Dakota and I have fine lungs.
Yeah. So like, she would send her to spend a lot of time in Florida. Now, Elizabeth also ends up dropping out of Medford High School where she went when she was a sophomore. So she kind of just like did her thing, I guess. Like I don't know if she dropped out because she was not good at school. It didn't really say, just said she dropped out. Maybe she missed a lot of school because of going to Florida. I'm not really sure. Now in 1942, so this is now basically 12 years after her mom decides that she's going to like get a job and like take care of the family, a letter shows up for Elizabeth's mother in the mail. And it's a letter that's from her father, who had actually, again, been assumed dead for all these years. And it's actually a letter of apology. And it's him letting her know that not only is he well and alive, but he lives in California and had started a whole ass new life.
Nope, I would have killed him.
Which I'm like, you're a fucking dick, dude. So basically...
Makes me think of if great grandma's husband just showed up one day.
Like, he basically... I mean, he didn't necessarily fake his death, but he made it seem like he died. And then he just like picked up and abandoned his whole ass family. And then not only did he go to California and start a new life and then like reach out to them 2 years later and be like, hey, move to Cali. We got a new life. He just pretended for 12 years that he was dead. And then he's like, oh, by the way, I'm living my life in California. And also, you're not invited, but I just wanted to let you know I'm sorry.
I would honestly, for my own peace of mind, like if that was me, I would rather you just never tell me again.
I'm saying,
like, I'd rather you leave
stay
me
like you pretend like you're dead. Like, that's it.
And then if fate happens, then I'd see you in California.
And then you'd be dead anyways because I'd fucking kill you. So in December of 1942, so this is the same year that her mom receives the letter, Elizabeth actually moves to Vallejo, California to live with her dad. And
fuck no.
Yeah. Which, by the way, she has not seen her dad since she was 6 years old. So she was 6 years old when her dad went missing or disappeared, and she decided she's going to go live with him. Like, absolutely not. Now, her father is working at a naval shipyard in San Francisco Bay, and so she goes and lives with him. Now, January of 1943, Elizabeth ends up moving away from her father because they do not get along. They have a lot of arguments. And also, you got to realize 1943, like she's 19 years old. So it's not like she's a child. So she's 19. She's trying to live her life. She moves in with this guy who she hasn't seen since she was 6 years old, and they don't get along. And probably because
didn't you say that he has a new family too?
No, he just had a new life. He just had a whole new life. Like,
okay. I mean, that makes it a little bit better. Thank God.
Yeah.
But
so Elizabeth ends up getting a job at the base exchange, which like the naval base, the base exchange as a cook, which is also right now, it's actually known as the Vandenberg Space Force Base, but that's where she worked in California. Now, at this time, she briefly lives with an Air Force sergeant, and there were reports of him abusing her at times during this time. And I don't know if they were like together as a couple or if she was just rooming with him or whatever, but there were reports of abuse in that somewhat relationship. Now in mid 1943, She ends up leaving the base exchange and she moves to Santa Barbara, California. And she is arrested on September 23rd, 1943 for drinking at a local bar while being underage because she's only 20 years old at this time. Now, after this, they end up sending her, part of her consequences of, getting caught or whatever is not jail time, but instead sending her back to Massachusetts to live with her mom. So because she wasn't underage, like under 18, but she was under 21. So they were like, get back. However, I'm going to note something really quick. My mom was born in Chicago. She was born in Illinois, not Chicago. She was born in Illinois. And when my mom was 18 years old, she's told us 18 years old in Illinois back in the day was legal age to drink in a bar for beer. You could get beer. My mom used to go into bars at the age of 18 and drink beer, and it was legal. So there is that chance that Elizabeth thought that she could get into bars and drink at 18.
I don't think it was a federal law. Like, I think it was by state.
Yeah,
for a while,
it
and
was.
Then it
yes.
changed to a federal
So it's
law.
like, I think it's one of those things that maybe that's why she felt she could drink, is because she moved to California when she was 19.
No,
and
or she just didn't give a fuck.
I mean
there's always
true.
that.
I mean, there is absolutely some truth to that. But she gets sent back to Massachusetts. That's part of her punishment. However, she ends up actually going to Florida instead. Like she's like, yeah, sure, I'll go back to Massachusetts. And then she's like, nah, I'm just going to Florida.
I don't know why they thought that'd be a good idea. Just like let her
go. Like,
herself.
hey, listen, promise you're going to make it back to Massachusetts. She's like, no problem. So she goes to Florida, and then she would occasionally visit her family in Boston. Like she would go up and visit them. Like she didn't have a problem with it, but she didn't want to live there. Now, while she's in Florida, she meets Major Matthew Gordon Jr., who was an Air Force officer. Now, apparently Matthew had been involved in a plane crash in India. And while he was in India recovering, because he survives, he's in India, he's recovering, he stays there, and he writes Elizabeth a letter. And in his letter, he asks her to marry him because they had been together for a while. And she gets the letter and she's like, yes. So she literally is like, sends him a letter back and was like, yes, I will marry you when you get back. Like, yay. However, Matthew ends up dying on August 10th of 1945 in another plane crash. How fucking unfortunate.
That's sad.
I know.
That's kind of sad.
That's not kind of sad. That's totally sad. Her fiance dies and he gets in a plane crash and gets injured and then literally dies in a plane crash. I know that he was an Air Force officer, but damn, like that seems weird to me. 2 plane crashes? That's very, very sad. So in July of 1946, Elizabeth decides to pack up and move to Los Angeles, California. Now she meets up with a man named Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, and she had actually met him in Florida, but he was stationed in California. So when she moved back to California, she was like, oh, cool. Like, I know you. Let's hang out. So she gets a job as a waitress, and she even rents a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. So she's starting to get her life together in Los Angeles. Now, she is also described by some people as an aspiring actress. Like people who supposedly knew her or knew of her said she wanted to be an actress, which is why she lived in Hollywood. However, there is not any records of her ever actually getting any acting jobs and not even like auditioning. So that is a rumor that nobody actually knows if it's true or not, of whether or not she wanted to be an actress. Now on January 9th, 1947, Elizabeth returns home to LA after a quick trip to San Diego with a man named Robert Manley, who was a 25-year-old married salesman that she had been dating. No, sweetheart.
I don't want to talk about it.
Now, she was dropped off by Robert at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA. Now, what he dropped her off there for is she was supposed to be meeting up with one of her sisters that afternoon. Like he drops her off there. She's supposed to be meeting with her sisters at this hotel, and then they're going to go off and do whatever it was, maybe have lunch or whatever. So some of the staff at the Biltmore Hotel did report seeing her. They said they saw her go into the lobby, use the phone in the lobby, look almost like she was a little bit angry, and then hang up the phone and walk out of the hotel. And then she was seen by people at the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge who actually saw her as well there. But that was the last time anybody actually saw her. Now on January 15th, so this is 4 days later, Elizabeth's naked body is found in the Leimert Park in Los Angeles. Now, a woman is walking with her 2-year-old daughter through the park, as one would, and she sees this body on the ground. Now, she originally thinks it's like a mannequin because it's just like there. It's just kind of like sitting there. And so she thinks it's a mannequin from a distance. But as she gets closer, she actually realizes that not only is it not a mannequin, but it is a woman who is dead and her body has been cut in half at the waist. And her blood had been drained out of her body. So she was completely white. There was no blood anywhere. And her face had been cut. On her face, her mouth, she had been cut from the corner of her mouth all the way to her ears on both sides, which gives her what people call as like a Joker smile or the Glasgow smile. So when you think of like, for people nowadays, I think people would more think of Joker.
They'd relate it to the Joker smile.
Where he's got like the cuts that go all the way to his ears on both sides. So that her mouth was cut like that. She had numerous cuts and bruises on her breasts and thighs. Entire portions of her flesh had actually been removed. The lower portion of her body was positioned a foot away from her upper body. So there was a foot gap between her upper body and lower body, and her intestines were tucked underneath her butt.
That's...
Now, her body was also posed with her hands over her head. Her elbows were bent at right angles and her legs were spread apart. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are pictures. Now, there are pictures because after this happened, it spread very quickly. And there were people like reporters that showed up and took pictures. There are pictures. Now, every picture that I saw of actual pictures, they're blurred out, but you can completely see how the body is cut in half. And there are pictures of her face and it is fucked up. So I'm letting you know, if you want to look at them, Google them. An autopsy ends up showing that she had ultimately been killed because of of lacerations and a hemorrhage on her head due to blows to her face. So what they believe killed her was actually whatever somebody had done to her face. Now, the thought was that she had been dead for about 10 hours when her body was found. And they also could tell that the body had been washed clean. So it not only had been bled completely, but it had also been washed clean. Now, near her body, they did find a heel print in the ground amongst tire tracks. Now, a cement sack was also found near the body, and this cement sack had contained watery blood. So now they're like, okay, well, this cement sack is obviously part of her blood. So they're wondering if maybe, it's got water mixed into it. So maybe it was when they washed off the body or whatever, but somehow, some way, this whole scenario is going on in this park. Almost immediately after her body is discovered, the news gets out about her murder and it becomes a fucking media frenzy. And this is when she's dubbed Black Dahlia. Here's the thing. We all have an issue with, well, at least I do have an issue with how media and news people handle situations. I always have. I think they're fucking shisty and slimy, right? If you need any fucking further indication that this is true, listen to what I'm about ready to tell you. Journalists call Phoebe Short. They call her mother on the phone because remember, her mom lives in Massachusetts. In my mind, you'd think they're calling her to tell her that her fucking daughter died. No, they call her and they basically talk to her and they pry all this information they can about her daughter, ask her all these personal questions about her daughter. And they tell her that her daughter had won a beauty contest and that they wanted to know everything they could about her so they could print it.
That's fucked up. Only
after they got as much information as they could did they end up saying, oh, by the way, your daughter's actually dead. Which, of course, she initially doesn't believe because she's like, you literally just told me she won a beauty contest and I gave you all this personal information. Like, what are you talking about? But she does end up getting confirmation of her daughter's murder from the LAPD, which, again, fucking slimy people. So that's how her mom finds out. Now, police start their investigations and they start with the fact that they were suspicious of some sort of a medic as being the person who was the murderer. Somebody who had medical experience. And the reason was because the precision of the cuts made in her body, specifically the cutting in half. So the way that the body was cut in half is something that was taught at medical school. I don't know why the fuck you would teach somebody to cut a body in half like that at medical school, but there's actually a procedure. And the way her body was cut is exactly that procedure. So somebody who did it had to have known that procedure. it was not, because it was specifically cut like below the tailbone or below the lower lumbar spine or something. Like there was a specific way, and they were like, this is an actual procedure taught in medical school. No, like if it was like a person who had no medical background and they wanted to cut somebody in half, they're going to just cut them in half and it's going to be rigid and it's going to be weird. But it wasn't like that. So they were immediately like somebody with a medical degree or has medical experience, plus the fact that they drained the body of blood. These are all things that like normal people would not know how to do. Police come up with several leads. However, none of them pan out. Like they come up with several leads, look into them, none of them pan out. On January 21st, 1947, a man actually contacts the editor of the LA Examiner and claims to be the killer. The caller congratulates the editor on his newspaper coverage, and he says that he actually plans on turning himself in, but not until the police investigate further. But he also promises to send some of, as he said, Beth, not Elizabeth, but some Beth souvenirs in the mail. So on January 24th, 3 days later of 1947, police have what they feel is a breakthrough because a suspicious package is mailed to the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper. And inside this package, it contains Elizabeth's alleged birth certificate, photographs, business cards, and an address book. And the package had been cleaned with the same way as Elizabeth's body, which was cleaned with gasoline. So this package had been cleaned the same way. However, they go to fingerprint the package, but there's no fingerprints good enough to try to get any sort of fingerprint, solid fingerprints. Then on January 26th, 1947, so 2 days later, another letter is sent to the LA Examiner. Now, this letter names a location that the killer says that he's going to turn himself in. Now, police go to this location. They wait at the same time and the same location where the letter says it's going to be, and nobody shows up. However, another letter is sent a couple days later, and it says, and I quote, "I have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." So whoever this person is who was doing this, so whether it was a hoax or really the killer, they decided they weren't going to turn themselves in. So police end up actually interviewing over 100 men for this murder. And however, no charges because they don't have anything. They do actually get several false confessions though, which is so fucking weird. I still don't understand the false confession thing. I don't understand that. Now on March 14th, 1947, a suicide note is found tucked into clothing by the ocean's edge in Venice Beach, California. Now it reads, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." And that's what it said. Now, the clothes that it was found with gave no clue as to who they belonged to. And now police thought, they didn't know who that was. So now they're like, okay, so somebody is supposedly killing themselves because they killed Elizabeth. However, let's not forget that her dad also supposedly killed himself too. So let's not pretend like that shit couldn't be fake. So they can't find out who that guy is. So they're like, okay.
It's her dad.
Right. Another person that they thought was a suspect was Mark Hansen. Now, Mark Hansen was the one who actually was the owner of the address book that was found in the package that was sent to the Examiner. Okay, so they sent this address book and they thought, okay, well, he's obviously a suspect because this is his address book. Why is it in her belongings? So they think he's a suspect. Now, he is a wealthy nightclub owner. He also did have a connection with Elizabeth. She had stayed actually at his house with some friends, so they knew each other. However, Mark gets cleared of all suspicions. They look into his background, they look into alibis, and for whatever reason, he is not held accountable. Well, I mean, I don't think he did it. Well, according to them, they didn't think he did it. Now, by spring of 1947, the case has gone cold, and they really have exhausted all of their leads, and they are actually not able to find any new ones. So there was a lot of blame put on the press for interfering with the investigation and making a circus of the murder because it was so, again, it went from being like a murder of a woman to the Black Dahlia, and it was like all these things and all these rumors started about her. There had also been a lot of things printed that were not true about Elizabeth. For instance, talking about people had talked about how she was kind of a harlot and she was, sleeping with all these men. And it's like, well, that wasn't necessarily true. And, how she was, again, the movie star thing. Nobody really knows if she was really an aspiring actress or not. And then they did continue to probe where they shouldn't. And they also, these are the reporters, they would probe where they shouldn't and they would report findings that were not verified. So they would report things that they felt were part of the case, but it would come out that they were not. And so they blamed the media, which I feel to this day we have that issue. They blame the media for a lot of the misfindings and the problems because the media just got in the way. They just made it worse because the media reported the way they did. Think of how many false confessions. Had the media not jumped right on board, you wouldn't have had a bunch of false confessions. And when people did confess, you had a better chance of being like, oh, this could potentially be the person, because not everything's being reported then. To this day, the case remains unsolved. However, there have been some theories more recently about this case. So in 1999, retired LAPD detective Steve Hodel, now he came out and said he thinks his father is responsible for the murder of Elizabeth Short. He said he was going through his father's belongings after his father passed away, and he found 2 photos of a woman who he said was literally Elizabeth Short. He said they were so similar to what Elizabeth Short looked like, there's no way it wasn't her. Now, he ends up using his own detective skills because, again, he's a fucking detective. So he starts using his own detective skills and he finds out that, first of all, he takes a sample of his dad's handwriting and takes the letters that were given to the LAPD, to the LA Examiner back in the day, and he brought that to a handwriting expert and said, compare these samples. It was found that there is a very strong possibility that the handwriting, that those letters were written, or that the letter was written by the same person who had written the sample. But it was inconclusive enough that it wasn't solid enough. But the handwriting expert said, oh no, there's a lot of similarities here. Like, this absolutely could be the same person. So there's that first thing. Now, another reason he thinks his father was responsible is because Steve's father was a doctor. Now, his dad attended medical school in the 1930s. Well, in the 1930s, that is when I'm going to totally butcher this name, but we're going to try it. So this is when the hemicorporectomy was taught, which is the method that deemed to be how Elizabeth's body was cut. So his father not only was a doctor, his father not only attended medical school in the 30s when this was taught, okay? And his father learned that method. Now, he also finds a folder that contains receipts of contracting work on his childhood home. Now, these receipts dated a few days before the murder, and this one specific receipt sticks out to him because this receipt was dated a couple of days before the murder for a large bag of concrete. This happens to be the same size and brand as the concrete bag that was found near Elizabeth's body with the bloody water in it. Now, Steve creates a book in 2003 and he publishes it. Well, there is a columnist who has read his book and he is fact checking this book against, what Steve's saying. And he actually finds that not only did Steve talk about all this stuff about George, which is his dad. His dad is George. So not only does he look into all this information, goes, wow, yeah, he's a definite viable suspect, but he also finds that there was a short list that the police had created back in the day. And George Hodel was on that short list of suspects. So much so that his home was actually bugged at one point by the police officers. Like, they snuck into his home and bugged his house. And they wanted to do it so they could monitor his activities. And most of the recordings that they had were inaudible, probably just because of where you got to figure it's like the 40s and 50s. I think they bugged his home actually in 1950, but you figure it's not like bugging shit nowadays. But most of it isn't audible. However, there are some things that stand out in those recordings. Number 1. At 8:25 p.m. on one of the days, they heard a woman scream. They heard a woman scream again. And they said it should be noted that the woman was never heard before the scream, meaning that you never heard a woman's voice, but then all of a sudden there's a woman screaming in their home. Later, that same day, George Hodel was overheard telling somebody, like he's talking to somebody in his home, and he says, and I quote, "Realized there was nothing I could do, put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket, get a taxi. Expired 12:59. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured out, killed her." So those are the pieces that they could pull out of what he was saying. He also continued on to say, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." So these are all things that were fact checked now from this columnist who was looking into Steve Hodel's book, goes and basically requests records from the LAPD for the Black Dahlia case, looks into those records, finds out George Hodel is on their short list, finds out they bugged his home, finds these transcripts from the shit they heard in his home. Now, Steve has actually said that he thinks not only did his father kill Elizabeth Short, but he also thinks his dad was a serial killer. Now, I don't know why, like, I've not read his book. I kind of want to find his book and read it now.
Well, shit, you should.
Like, I kind of want to because it's really interesting. But he is, in my opinion, he's a very strong suspect. Now, there is another suspect, and his name is Leslie Dillon. Now, Leslie Dillon, he was a brief suspect, but he was cleared back in the day. But what it is believed is that he essentially got rid of Elizabeth for that club owner, Mark Hansen. If you remember, we talked about Mark Hansen being a suspect, but was cleared of all whatever. So what they're thinking is that he was basically asked by Mark to get rid of her. Okay. Because she had refused Mark's sexual advances. So remember, she had stayed at his house with some friends. Well, they knew each other. Well, apparently Mark liked her and wanted her in a sexual way, and she said no. And apparently the thought is that he went to Leslie and was like, get rid of her. Like, she refused me. Get rid of her. And so one of the reasons why they have him as a viable suspect is because he had actually previously worked as a mortician's assistant, which would lead to the idea that he would have known how to bleed a body, which was another thing. Again, somebody has to know how to bleed a body. Now, it was also noted that he, because he was brought in for questioning, he knew things about the victim and the crime that the police had not yet released. So he would be able to tell things like, for instance, he knew that Elizabeth had a tattoo on her thigh. However, the tattoo that was on her thigh was not on her thigh when her body was found. That was one of the pieces of flesh that had been removed. So he knew that she had a tattoo on her thigh. However, I will point out, though, that if he was anywhere near her anytime they went to that they hung out with, Mark or anything, there's a chance maybe she wore a skirt that he saw a tattoo on her thigh. Right. There is that chance as well. So, seeing that this is an unsolved murder, do you think either of these theories are the viable suspect? Do you think one looks better than the other, or do you think they still are just totally off base and we'll probably never know who it was anyways, but what's your thought?
No, I think it was his dad.
I do too.
100% I think it was his dad. There's too
I
many.
do too.
There's I know there's enough things to be like, well, maybe, but to me, there are more connections than not connections.
I mean, listen, there's too many coincidences to be coincidences, right?
Right.
So the fact that his handwriting is similar to the person who supposedly wrote those letters, the fact that he has concrete in the same size and brand at the same time and the same time frame that this happened, the fact that they have him talking on video saying, even if I did kill her, they wouldn't know because my secretary's dead. The fact that they have a woman screaming in his home, which was probably his secretary as he killed her, because she probably found out that he was a murderer. And again, if he was a serial killer, I mean, he was a doctor and he was somebody that nobody would ever look at. But the fact that he has in my mind, as a modern day detective, as we are, Sierra and I mean, hello. Sierra and I have done some things. We have helped. We
solved the yogurt shop murders.
We have helped solve some murders. Even though nobody knows we helped, we did because we put it out in the universe. So I agree with you. I think that George Hodel is 100% the person because, again, he was a suspect and he was on their short list of suspects. He was a doctor, so he would have known how to do this procedure. He would have known how to bleed a body. He also would have known how to wash and clean a body. The fact that that his son believes that how many people are going to grow up and be like, my dad's a killer? Nobody, unless you really think so. The fact that his son is an LAPD detective and did his own detective damn work, and whatever. Now, according to what I saw, his son, so Steve has gone multiple times, because again, he's retired. He's gone multiple times to the LAPD with this information. And he has said, you should really look into this. We should reopen the Black Dahlia case as a cold case. Let's try to link it to my dad. Let's see if we can figure this out. And they refuse every time, which is so bizarre to me, because Black Dahlia is one of those that there is a movie. I watched the movie a long time ago. There's a movie about it. And again, it's sensationalized. It's Hollywoodized. It's crazy. However, this is a big deal. Almost most people have heard of Black Dahlia. They don't know. Like, I told Sierra, we're doing Black Dahlia, and she goes, I've heard of her, but I don't know much about her.
I only know about her because for all those American Horror Story fans, I think it's the first season, actually, because they're all their own season. And there's one that's called Murder House, and the Black Dahlia is a person in the murder house.
See, so
and
but
the guy is a doctor,
right? Well, and that makes sense now. But see, if I
actually think they have a name for him.
Is it George Hodel?
I'm actually gonna look it up because I'm gonna look it up.
But my point is it's like most people know they've heard of Black Dahlia, but they don't know the details. Like, I heard of Black Dahlia, and I had been avoiding doing it because I was like, oh my God, it's such a popular case. But then when I started reading, I did not realize she was cut in half. I just knew Black Dahlia had the Joker cuts. I knew that. But I didn't realize her body was cut in half. And I didn't realize that she was separated from her body. And I didn't realize any of those things.
I lied. So the storyline in the American Horror Story, it says, and it explains it online too, of this is the difference. So the only relation was the character, like the actual character. Her name in the show is Elizabeth Short. So it's supposed to be like the Black Dahlia. Mm-hmm. But in the storyline of the show, she's a victim of the murder house and dies from a nitrous oxide overdose administered by a Dr. Charles Montgomery, who's a dentist, and created the iconic Glasgow smile.
Okay, yeah.
And then cut her body up in that. So really the only thing that's related
would be her name.
The only thing that's related is her name and then the smile and the basically how the body was found, because the body was found kind of in a similar fashion.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the only
still, it's like this is a very well-known murder.
But it was also by a doctor.
Yeah.
Not a dentist. Yeah. Or a dentist, but
that is, I mean, this is a very well-known case, but again, the details are not as well-known as you would think, because I think people automatically link Black Dahlia with the Glasgow smile, and I think that's about all that they think about is, oh, that's the lady that was cut from ear to ear. That's the kind of stuff that people think of. But when you look into it deeper, it's just like, holy moly, and the fact that it's unsolved. I know that it was back in the 40s, so they didn't have as much detective work, but it is crazy to think that there is a chance that there's a man out here who is literally trying to produce evidence that his father is the killer, and they're not willing to reopen the case. Why not? If you could solve this case by doing a little bit more detective work and put a name on her killer, wouldn't that'd be a thing? Especially because, I mean, there's a good chance some of her family is still alive. So I don't, it's kind of weird to me that that's not something that they want to do, but whatever. I'm not part of the LAPD, so, it is what it is. But anyways,
I'm now more curious if his dad was a serial killer.
I know. I am. That's why I want to read his book, because I want to see what makes him think his dad was a serial killer. I would love to know, I would never talk about it on Fatal Blend, because I don't talk about unknown serial killers, not unknown, but I don't talk about people who are suspected serial killers, and I won't talk about the Zodiac killer on Fatal Blend, because we don't know who the Zodiac killer is, right? I wasn't going to talk about the Golden State Killer, but we now know who the Golden State Killer is, so I can talk about him now. But any of the serial killers that have never been found, Jack the Ripper, we'll never talk about Jack the Ripper, because he's unknown, right? There's no solid evidence of who he is. So I have too many serial killers to go through that I don't want to waste my time on the unknowns. But anyways, so yeah, that is the story of Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. So thank you for listening to us. Thank you for hearing our stories. And thank you for sticking with us. We appreciate you. Continue to follow, continue to like, and share us with all of those people that you think would like to hear about stories like the Black Dahlia. So now that you've heard the Black Dahlia, you make your decision. Sierra and I both agree that George Hodel is probably the best viable
No, not probably.
suspect.
We solved the case.
Yeah,
and he is
I mean, I
the
agree.
fucking
I
suspect.
feel like he is the murderer. We're just gonna call it.
We'll
We're
fucking
calling
make
it
him.
now, and in like fucking like 6 months, they're gonna come out and be like, "We
And
did it,
then-
and it's George
And
Hodel."
then I'll call my mom and be like, "Mom,
We
look, we solved the
solved
case."
So
That's what happened with the yogurt shop murder.
So exactly. So we conclusively say we think George Hodel is the murderer
and potentially a serial killer.
and potentially a serial killer. But we're gonna just say he did murder Elizabeth.
now we know what
Short.
Santa's bringing you.
What? A George Hodel book? I
Well,
mean,
no.
the Steve Hodel book.
It's like not George Hodel. but
Well, it's about George Hodel, but the Steve Hodel book.
yes.
Ooh, I'll have to tell your brother that because he was like, "What kinds of stuff do you want for Christmas?" Okay. Anyways, so yeah, we have voted that. If you have a different opinion, or if you have a different suspect, or if you have different thoughts, feel free to email us or let us know on social media, and let's discuss it. Because these ones that are unsolved are hard for me because I don't like having unsolved things in my brain, but we agreed to do them, so that's it. So other than that, one more time, thank you so much for listening to us talk about the Black Dahlia. Until next week. Catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.